Well, hello there everybody, and welcome to a new video of sorts. This is not going to be any kind of a regular type series, but I wanted to at least sit down in one video and highlight some of the more recent books that I have read. For me, reading is very important, and it's something I can get into just as much as any TV shows or movies or games, but I don't always do it. I don't always read. I go in kind of like spurts. A few years ago I read a bunch of stuff, and a few years before that, but then I just kind of tail off for some reason. A lot of the stuff I'm going to show here were books that I read probably 15, 16, 17, 18 years ago. Maybe not quite that far back, but a lot of these were stuff that I bought and read like in the mid to late 90s and over the years since. And it's just that I go through, I normally do my reading at work. It's kind of strange. A lot of people will read when they're sitting here at home or before they go to bed, which I do sometimes. But most of my reading comes when I'm sitting at work on my lunch break. I have an hour of lunch. I put my MP3 player in with music going and I start reading a book, which I have found people have told me that that's really strange. They're like, how can you concentrate on reading and listening to the music? Well, I concentrate on the reading. The listening to the music is just background. It's kind of like if you're watching a movie with music in the background, do you really question the music and the movie, and do they go together? In my opinion, in fact, sometimes music that I listen to during a book kind of becomes like the music you hear during a movie. And I just envision the tale as I'm reading it, and the music is the soundtrack. Anyway, since I don't know how in-depth I want to get in with each of these books, considering my amount of time, and I've already killed like 2 minutes, let's just get started, shall we? So this is roughly, I would say, since probably about September. These are the books that I have read. I'm going to dot through a couple here and there kind of things before I get into these two big piles over here that are all Star Trek Next Generation books. But I want to start with a really, really good trilogy of fantasy-style books written by an author named Chris Evans. It's not the actor from Captain America, but this is what is called the Iron Elves trilogy, and this is book number 1, A Darkness Forged in Fire. This is a very interesting take on fantasy. Chris Evans merges the fantasy-style world of elves and creatures and magic and myth with military-style ideas. I wish I could find a quote on here. Yeah, this is probably a good one. An unforgiving world of musket and cannon, bow and arrow, magic, diplomacy, and oaths, each wielding terrible power in an empire teetering on the brink of war. And it's that musket and cannon part that really stands out in this series, because it's like a, say, Civil War era military tactics brought into a fantasy-style world. So, I reread, or kind of picked up, well no, I reread this one because I tried to get back into it where I left off a few years back, and that's just not good with a book. So I reread this first one, A Darkness Forged in Fire, and by the time I had finally sat down and read the whole thing, I was hooked. So I picked up book number 2, which is The Light of Burning Shadows, which continues this story. I don't know, I'm not going to get too far into the characters and the story of it. I'm not sure if I'm even pronouncing the main character's name right, Kanoa Swift Dragon, or Kanawa. But he's an elf who got exiled for something that wasn't really his doing, but he had to take the fall because he was like the leader. And then a year later, after wandering around in the forest and living on his own, he gets pulled back into the Empire's affairs, and goes on this pretty epic quest to stop some magical force from coming back from years and years and years before. Anyway, I'm not really good at condensing / paraphrasing stories and stuff, but if you like fantasy style books and the idea of that musket and cannon being added into it, check out this series. Light of Burning Shadows is book number 2, and then I went on to book number 3, which was, I think, relatively new when I bought this last year, 2011. So anyway, I was able to get a hardcover book for number 3, which is Ashes of a Black Frost, and it kind of finished up the series, and I really enjoy it. I hope that maybe they'll have some more books in this world. I think there's been some talk about it, and I'd also love to see something like that turned into a series or movies. Okay, so let's jump to these last 3 separate little things before I get into the Star Trek books. And I'm going to start off with this one, which is the novelization of the movie 47 Ronin, starring Keanu Reeves. A movie that came out this last week. I pre-purchased it, as pointed out in another video, and I was able to watch it on Vudu, but unfortunately the 2 times I watched it, it was so late at night, I kept zonking out. But I can tell you from the movie was really good. The novelization is better, which, you know, kind of makes me laugh because it's a book based on a movie, not the other way around, where usually the movie sucks and the book is really awesome because the book comes first and the movie is condensed. Well, this is sort of a reverse of that effect. Except, like I said, what I've seen of the movie I liked, but I can tell that the book spent more time exploring things, and the movie has to be quick and get through it quickly. Anyway, this was really good. I enjoyed that story quite a bit. Then I read my first and only so far novel based on the X-Files, and it's funny, you won't be able to see this in the video, but my camera's facial recognition thing is popping up boxes around their faces. But this book is called Whirlwind. It's not numbered as to like the way the Star Trek books are, but this was a really interesting X-Files story. I wasn't sure I could read a book based on X-Files and be pulled into it the same way the TV show does, but this did it for me. I'm not going to try to get into the story. It's complicated, as X-Files stories usually are, but this was really good. I'll definitely be trying to get more X-Files books like that. Then recently I went back to, because this was another book I had started a few years back and then just, I don't know, drifted away from it. But Stephen King's Drawing of the Three, which is book number 2 in the Dark Tower series. Now, real quick, I have to mention, favorite author of all time, Stephen King. I have a lot of Stephen King books in my collection. I've read a lot of Stephen King books, and yet there are so many that I haven't read. But this series here is really drawing me in, and I think behind The Stand, this series, at least as a whole, we'll see how it plays out over the next 5 books that have been written in this series, but I think they're right up there next to The Stand as my favorite books of all time. This is the Drawing of the Three. It's really hard to try to explain the story on this one, so I'm not even going to try. I tried to look for my copy of The Gunslinger, which was the first book. I believe that's the name of it, was The Gunslinger. I couldn't find it, but I read it a while back. But there's the Drawing of the Three, and then I am currently reading The Wastelands. This is where what I have left is this small part. I thought I might finish it on my days off this week, but it didn't happen. I really just get into reading when I'm at work, and then I can down like 100 pages on my lunch break. But when I get home, there's too many other distractions. This is where I'm at, and then I have the next book. I can't remember now the name of the 4th book, but I ordered it on eBay the other day, so it'll be getting here soon. All right, well, now we're going to zip through these Star Trek books that I read, and there's quite a few of them here. Let me just say 14 Star Trek books that I put down over the last like 6 months. This one, Immortal Coil. This is basically just a story about Data and some other android entities that exist in the Star Trek universe. It was a very interesting story. I don't remember a lot of the details about these books now. I was planning on it. This is how long I've been thinking about doing the videos. I mentioned this before. But I wanted to do videos and kind of show each of these books and maybe talk about them as I was reading them, but I just didn't get to doing the videos till about a month ago. But there's Immortal Coil. That's book number nothing. Doesn't have a number on it like some of these do. Alright, this is book number 43. This is A Fury Scorned. And like I said, I'm not going to try to get into all the details on each of these books because I only have about 5 minutes left. So, Fury Scorned, needless to say, I loved all of these books that I'm about to show you, but there were a few that stood out as better, in my opinion, and now that it's been so long since I read them, I won't be able to remember for sure. Book number 12, Doomsday World. This is a good one, and I don't think the camera's going to really be able to pick it up, but I just think Data's face on here is so funny. I don't know. This is book number 25, Grounded. We got Data and Captain Picard and the Enterprise on there. Book number 29, Sins of Commission, with Worf and Commander Riker on the front there. Section 31, and the book is entitled Rogue. I think this was a longer series, or maybe it was planned on being a longer series, this Section 31. Otherwise, I can't understand why they would put that up there and have this other title thing going on down below. That was a good one. This one definitely is amongst my favorite, and this is just because of how much I love the character Q. But this is the book that's called IQ, and you see Q on the front there with like the galaxy or something in a bottle. Something to note about this, it's written by John Delancey and Peter David. Peter David is a big name in comics and sci-fi and Star Trek type stuff, but John Delancey is the actor who played Q. So they actually let him write or have something to do with the writing of a story about his character. And it's great. I mean, if you love the Q character in the show, this book just oozes with Q. I have some other Q books, but I haven't read them yet. They're going to be on there probably after Dark Tower books. I get through them. Anyway, this one's not numbered, but this is The Best and the Brightest. I enjoy this one here because this actually ties into at least one episode of the show. Some of these characters here, these are Starfleet Academy cadets, I guess that's what they're called. And it's a story about them. It barely involves any of the Next Generation crew. It focuses mostly on those characters who are then, like I said, they tie in later on or earlier than this in an episode or two of the show itself. Alright, book number 45, Intellivore. This is another one where Data, I don't know, there's just something about the way that they drew him or depicted him in some of these covers. It's just kind of strange. Move my PS3 controller out of the way. Okay, here's an interesting one. Not a numbered book, probably because it's an odd and unusual crossover. But this is Star Trek Next Generation and the X-Men, Planet X. Now apparently, I believe this is a follow-up to a comic book crossover between the two. And this follows up with the encounter that the Next Generation crew and the X-Men had at one point and brings them back together for another story. Maybe a little cliched, but all of a sudden in the Next Generation universe, a planet has a similar situation where people become mutated and have powers and abilities. And the X-Men just happen to come back in time to help out with the ordeal. It was a good book, though. Really well done. I mean, I was able to buy into the whole idea that these two strange entities or properties would come together like they did. Anyway, here's book number 44, The Death of Princes. This was a really, really good one. I remember part of this has them going like kind of sort of undercover on a planet where they shouldn't be. Let me see. Yeah. Renegade Federation observer has disappeared intent on violating the Prime Directive by preventing a tragic political assassination. It was a really interesting story. Probably not the kind of story I would normally go for, but then I really enjoyed it. Okay. I don't know if I read this one, to be honest. No, I didn't read this one. I don't know why this one ended up in this pile. This is Descent, the novelization of the series' 6-season cliffhanger and its exciting conclusion. That's why I know I didn't read it, because I made it a point not to read any of the books that I own that were episodes. I gotta hurry up, because I'm running out of time. Number 40, Possession, with Troy and Worf on the front there. And the last one in this group, number 42, Infiltrator. Riker and Worf on the cover there. Anyway, those are the books that I've read, and the last, I would say, I guess it's going on close to 8 months now. That's all the stuff that I've put down, and I have a feeling my reading's going to slow down a little bit in the future because I'm just running out of books to read, and I don't want to have to be running out there and buying this book and that book and this book and that book. Well, I don't know why I wouldn't want to if I'm in the swing of reading things, but don't mind me, I'm just being silly. But those are the books that I've read recently. You know, if anybody watches this, comment on any of those if you're interested in them, if you've read any of them. Any suggestions on things to read, I'm always up for new reading things. I do think I'll probably do another book-related video in the future to talk about like my love for Stephen King and some of my other favorite authors. So I'll touch on this subject again sometime soon. So we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot for watching.